The last story we have is maybe on a little bit of a different side. Stan likes to bring these ones to us that these kinds of devices might not be the types of things you readily think about with regard to security, certainly when a lot of us think about our computers. But I guess there's been a new ATM vulnerability that was discovered somewhere over in the European area or something like that.
Well, it might have been discovered in the European area, but it was used in the Asian region.
Well, that's okay.
I was reading an article on the Krebs blog, and they mentioned the story about these two Ukrainian nationals being arrested. And in their hotel room, they found a whole bunch of hardware that looked suspicious, and it was basically hardware that we're using to steal money from ATMs. This is not new, taking money from ATMs and various kind of physical things against ATMs. It's not a new concept. What was interesting was how they were loading malware onto the ATMs. So usually in the past, attackers put some sort of a skimmer or a keypad or even a video camera to record your keystrokes. There have even been cases of trying to find the USB drive on an ATM and putting some sort of a dongle on there to install malware. In this case, they had these long PCB cards that looked like credit cards, but much longer, maybe the length of 5 credit cards. And they would insert them into where the ATM card would go. And somehow this would cause, I guess some logic in this card, would cause the ATM to reboot. And when it started up, it launched malware, I guess somewhere in the memory of the ATM, which would record all of the credit card numbers and PIN transactions of people. And it would kind of leave no trace. You wouldn't know that the machine was infected when you come up to it. There was no skimmer, there was no keypad, there was no camera. Everything lived in the memory of this ATM. So they could go away and come back a few days later, which they did, with a different PCB card. And when they inserted that one, it would pull off all of the stolen information. And then they used a third card to delete the virus from memory. And using these different cards and inserting them, they kind of didn't give you any clues as to what was going on with the ATM. Now, to me, it sounds like they probably had a lot of knowledge about the specific type of ATM that was involved here in order to be able to develop these cards. But it's interesting that, I guess, where there is a motivation that they are able to do something like this. They got away with about $100,000. Well, they were able to steal $100,000, but they didn't get away because they got arrested. So it's an interesting story. I know that when I use the ATM, I certainly look for these kinds of suspicious things where there might be something hanging off the ATM, or I know some ATMs have like a blinking feature on the card readers. I make sure that that's present and there's nothing weird on the keypad. But this certainly, you would have no way as a user of the ATM to detect
There's no
something
physical
like this.
additions that have been added to it to kind of clue you in that something's strange here, right?
Right, and that's I guess the concerning thing. And really, the article was kind of light on details. It wasn't clear exactly how the mechanism worked. So it's a little troublesome that we don't know, but again, something to be aware of. And really the only way to protect yourself is to follow your credit card statements and your debit card transactions and your banking statements, just to make sure you know how your money is flowing.
Yeah, and I guess the interesting thing to me about it is, if this was me, not to say that I would do this, but I kind of find it interesting that they're implanting malware that is recording the card numbers and pins. Why not just implant malware that says, when I type in a code on the keypad, it just dispenses money, and just take the money out of the machine and not even like record any, concept that happened or something. So maybe they just didn't know how to do that with the machine or whatnot. But it seems like that would be at least less victims involved, right? Because it would be the bank itself getting
victimizing the bank directly.
Right.
Which I think there have been malware like that have been exposed. Actually, by Brian, he blogs about these kinds of things all the time. Brian Krebs, that is.
Right.
Not our Brian.
Not our Brian. And in one case, there was malware on an ATM that did just that. You put in some kind of key combination, and it would present you a special menu where it would tell you how much money was in the ATM, and you could pick which denominations you wanted dispensed to you and how much of each. I know we're used to just the 20s here, but internationally, other banks, they use other denominations in the machine, so you could get different sums of money, not just multiples of 20.
Right.
What I find the most interesting is that the different phases of the operation each had their own separate physical card, from what you said.
Yeah.
One card had to be slotted in for the installation of the malware, one had to be slotted in for retrieval, and a third one had to be slotted in for removal, which to me suggests that there's something, I don't know, either that the guys who developed this are not hardware wizards and had to implement it separately on 3 different PCBs, or there's something very hardware specific about the attack that requires you to have completely different circuits.
I would think that, yeah, I mean, if I was doing this, which I wouldn't, probably it was easier to implement this way, so they had one specific function for each. And it's also possible,
convenience.
It could be a convenience factor. It could also be that somebody else developed the PCB cards and gave it to these guys, and you extract the money.
Right.
So money extraction.
There's a mastermind behind it, and then maybe some.
And these guys are the ones who get caught with the equipment, but there might be somebody else who developed it, and he's like, well, use this for step 1 and this for step 2, this for step 3.
That sounds pretty plausible.
And I also wonder, I mean, there's got to be some sort of interface that has enough, it's verbose enough, I guess, because mag stripes by themselves.
Right, don't have a lot of data on them.
Right, but
usually.
If you can upload malware, you've got a significant amount of storage on whatever it is that you're slotting into this machine, and an interface that can accept it, too.
Right.
So that raises all sorts of interesting questions, and I'd love to hear more about how this is actually done.
I wonder if they'll be posting more details. It's highly unlikely. I know that discoveries of this nature are made. They try to keep it under wraps and then quickly fix the issue.
I wonder if it's only certain models or vendors of hardware. You know, that might be some programming interface that's available only on a certain model. You know, that's kind of me guessing that. Once it reboots, if you have a card in, it will try to read from that card or something on reboot or something like that.
It could also have something to do with the length of the card. It's possible that further in the machine there is some special card reader and just uses that same slot.
Because it was long. These things were like probably a foot long at least. It's not the size of your regular debit card. Yeah, from the pictures.
It might have something to do with that. I guess it's possible we'll never know, but we know now that the ATM manufacturers are surely aware of it.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that whoever did this knew a lot of details about the specific hardware.
Another interesting thing I thought was apparently the Ukrainian police like to put masks on their the convicts because the mugshots have masks on their heads for some reason.
Apparently, I think that might be in China or Hong Kong where they got arrested. It might be the
protect their identity.
Yeah, something like that. In some countries, you when you're a defendant in court, they put you in a cage, and here, I guess maybe they protect your identity before you're convicted.
Interesting. All right, thanks for that story.